everybody, welcome back to the Fred Minnick Show. I am doing something different today. Normally I have a guest on and we talk about whiskey and their careers and music, but something happened to me that required me to do a solo show. I'm telling you right now, I am absolutely perplexed. I am without a doubt actually angry over this, and I wanted to use this as an opportunity to kind of like talk about it. Maybe to vent. I mean, this is my podcast, so I can kind of do whatever I want on it. But this is going to be a little therapeutic for me. So bear with me, and I'll get into all of that here in a minute. But first, I want to make sure everyone knows what's going on. I got a lot of cool stuff going on. If you haven't already, head on over to Dash Radio. I've got my own segment over there called the Minnick Minute, airing on Dash X every week on Monday, and it replays throughout the week, so make sure you're checking that out. They're also taking on the podcast, so you might be able to hear that in between some sweet tunes. So I'm just really excited about that relationship with Dash Radio. I also started a barrel club, so if you want to check that out, you can go to craftshack.com and you'll see a special whiskey club that I've got going. I can't tell you how excited I'm about that. I got a Smoke Wagon 13-year-old coming up that's going to be absolutely divine. I cannot wait for that. And I've got a lot of really, really great podcast guests coming up. I've got NFL Hall of Fame finalist Charles Woodson going to be up pretty soon. And a lot of people in the hip-hop and rock and country scenes going to be on the show. We're going to be drinking whiskey, talking all about it. Now, I promise you that I've got an event coming on, and I'm going to fill this airwave with as much like passion as I possibly can about this subject. But I am absolutely perplexed as to why Billy Idol has not won a Grammy. And I am perplexed as to why Billy Idol is not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I mean, I'm telling you, I couldn't believe it when I saw this. Now, I consider myself a big music buff. I love music. It's like, that's why I created this show. It's because it's my two passions, whiskey and music, where I am able to like pair whiskey to musician palates and, sip whiskey with them and educate them. And the reason why I love musicians is because they're artistically focused. They're always thinking. And so they can connect their palate very quickly to their brain for like some kind of creative conversation about the whiskey. So I absolutely love that. And I would love to interview Billy Idol one day. That would be awesome for me. But I'm going to get into the depth of why this is so upsetting for me here in a minute. But first, a word from our sponsors.
The Fred Minnick Show is brought to you by The Beeline, Michter's, and 291 Colorado Whiskey.
I look at Billy Idol's career and I think to myself, this guy is a pop icon. I mean, he completely, changed the culture of what we think about punk. I mean, he made spiky hair cool. I mean, he's got this lip curl. He's just got so many things that changed music. And he didn't win a Grammy. I mean, he still could, don't get me wrong, but he was up for 3 nominations, did not win. And there's always great music coming out every year. So he was up for in the 27th annual Grammy Awards in 1984. Rebel Yell was up for Grammy for Best Rock Vocal Performance. The 29th annual one in 1986, To Be a Lover, was up for Best Rock Vocal Performance, and the 33rd, 1990, Cradle of Love, was up for one. So there's obviously some snubs here, some great music that he had, like Money Money, White Wedding, Night Crawling, Dancing with Myself, just, a few that I can think of that really could have, should have been in that, that nomination list. But let's take a look at who won that, who won that. So he did lose to some good people. I mean, he lost to, in 1984, he lost to Bruce Springsteen, which that's a tough one. If you're going to lose to someone, I got to think that Bruce Springsteen is one. In 1986, that was definitely a year that, To Be a Lover, I really do think was one of his like, greatest ever. 1986, he lost to Robert Palmer, which, Robert Palmer, okay, Robert Palmer's Addicted to Love, beat out To Be a Lover. So apparently 1986 was the year of love. Yeah, I don't know. I think that I definitely think that Billy Idol should have, probably, but I'm not a voter on the Grammys. And then his 1991 Cradle of Love, staying in the love world, right? Lost to Eric Clapton. So he lost to, 3 really strong recording artists, but I think when you look at his career as a whole, he probably had some snubs in there as finalists as well. And I just don't see how Billy Idol has not won a Grammy. But that's, as awards go, it's all about those who vote on them. Now, I think that what's even more egregious is that he's not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame yet. And I don't get that. I feel like Billy Idol changed music. He changed music. He was essentially the face of largely rock and roll music television, which of course is how we consumed music for a very long time. Music TV is very different today, but I don't know. You got to ask yourself, why is he not in that? Why is he not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? I think that's a really good question to ask. Now, that being said, he had 7 studio albums, 12 songs on the Billboard Hot 100, and he may have another one yet, but he's had 4 top 10 hits on the Billboard Hot 100. And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to actually, take some time to pick my favorite Billy Idol songs and pair them to Bourbons. Okay, so Dancing with Myself is one that is sort of the first release, that is kind of his. This is when he breaks away from Gen X, and it climbs to number 27 on the Billboard's Hot One, the party chart. And this is the beat, the punk nature of it, the desire to be young again once you're listening to this. To me, this reminds me of a really great craft whiskey, something that's outside of the norm, something that you don't think about when you're talking about like American whiskey. I'm giving this to Woodinville. Woodinville is a beautiful craft distillery out of Washington, but they still have that kind of like craft appeal, and they're making great whiskey. In fact, one of them a couple years ago, one of their whiskeys about beat Pappy Vanwinkle on one of my blind tastings. But really great whiskey, and I think Dancing with Myself is a great pairing for Woodinville, and both like in flavor profile to match it, as well as the arc of what Woodinville is and Dancing with Myself is. Rebel Yell, obviously, you gotta say Billy Idol's song, Rebel Yell. I mean, that's just it. And it's not even close. Rebel Yell is indeed the perfect pairing for Rebel Yell. Now, they did drop the name of Rebel Yell. Now it's just Rebel. But, obviously the term Rebel Yell, it's connected to, the Civil War, and it's also connected to Billy Idol's song, but Rebel Yell came out long before Billy Idol's song. So, but it just kind of attached itself to that song, as well as a lot of other rock. They were drinking Rebel Yell backstage at Kiss. So, a lot of interesting rock history with the bourbon itself and Rebel Yell. But I think you cannot pair another whiskey with that Billy Idol song, Rebel Yell. So Mony, pop culture iconic. It is his number one hit. It is Billy Idol through and through. This will be played in movies and commercials forever. And I feel like the most iconic bourbon that we have right now that will stand the test of time, and you just look and you think of the bottle, it is much like the lyrics to Mony, and that is Maker's Mark. Maker's Mark is indeed iconic. It stands by itself. Not judging the whiskey itself, but just solely that bottle is as iconic as the song Mony. Now, White Wedding, you're at a party, maybe there's some drugs, maybe there's an orgy going in the back, there's all kinds of random shit going on. You brought your cousin, but he took off. Maybe he's like in the middle of getting arrested 3 blocks down with his pants off. I mean, crazy shit's going on while you're listening to White Wedding. It's always at that crazy party when someone's doing coke in the back and there's all kinds of shit going on over there, and you're just praying that nobody has a gun, And that to me is the bad boy bourbon. This is the party that you see it everywhere you go. It's in the hands of Slash. It's in the hands of Lemmy from Motorhead, and that's Jack Daniels. Jack Daniels is consumed everywhere, whether it's at good times or bad boy parties. But to me, White Wedding just screams Jack Daniels. The next one up is Night Crawling. You're clubbing and you're having a good time, but you're also just a little depressed. You're thinking about the best you've ever had, but still you're having a good time in the club. So it's basically you're in the moment of a club with Night Crawling, and you're just thinking to yourself, it used to be more fun. It used to be better. So this Night Crawling is Weller 12-year-old, because you used to be able to find it. Now you can't. And when you do find it, it's far too expensive, and it's not worth that money. And you think about when you used to buy it for $22. So Night Crawling is a little bit of you get a little depressed. Eyes Without a Face, on the other hand, might be my favorite Billy Idol song to see in video form. I just love it. I think in video, Billy Idol's like looking straight in the camera and he's got his lip curl. It's like, it was really my introduction to Billy Idol, was this song on MTV. But there's this, he's doing that. In addition to like showing his like famous lip curl and his fist, he's going, I can't do it. Nobody can do it. He's Billy Idol. It's Billy freaking Idol. He's got these dancers in the video that are slapping their asses kind of like a drum set. And there's this whole Say Your Prayers line that gives you a feeling that it's a kind of classic 1980s overzealous religious parents standing over you, judging you while you're holding a Led Zeppelin tape. I mean, not saying that happened to me, but maybe it did happen to me. So this is a bourbon that can stand up to religion and judgmental standards. It can stand up to the bull mess of like, you shouldn't be drinking that, you shouldn't be doing this, you shouldn't be doing that. I mean, we're constantly being judged everywhere all the time. And so Eyes Without a Face is that. It's the stand up, breaking outside of the judgmental zone. And so you need something that is strong and can make your lip curl. And for me, that's Booker's. Booker's is a bourbon that is a no apologies bourbon, has been around for a while, since 1987, and it has been something that year in, year out continues to impress. It's available, but it will also make your lip curl, and it'll break you outside of the judgmental zone of bourbon. So there's a lot of people in bourbon who judge you, will call you taters if you spend too much money. And if you buy Booker's, you're going to be okay. You might get a little lip curl action. Cradle of Love, talked about that one earlier. This one was up for a Grammy. This is about love and gets me to thinking about all the love lost. And it gets me to thinking about breakups and marital fights. And you can really go down like a slippery slope, like, why did you leave me? And you can get down that whole like pit of your argument of in your belly that's still there, and you're going through these arguments that you had 10, 15 years ago, like, no, you said that. I didn't say that. And so this is, to me, Cradle of Love is not a bourbon one. I'm skipping the bourbon and going straight tequila. And if I'm listening to this song, I'm just hoping, and I'm drinking this, I'm just hoping I don't wind up in a ditch with my pants off. I'm just saying, Cradle of Love just gets you down a slippery slope. Now, the Flesh of Fantasy, the rhythm and feel for this is, deep from Billy's deep and echoing voice. This always makes me feel like, he could have done heavy metal. He could have done like anything. It just shows you like the depth of his talents. Like he could have been like a vocalist in, somewhere, not necessarily opera, but that level of stage where he's singing classical or he's like on a Broadway tune or something. Like he's just, to me, this Flesh of Fantasy shows Billy Idol's vocal talent in a big way. And I've always listened to this song and thought to myself, I wonder if we could give him a mask and let him just, trade places with Corey Taylor one day on Slipknot. I just think that would be really, really cool if he did that. And so, to me, it's going to sound weird to a lot of people, but let me explain. This is the song that showed that Billy Idol could do anything. And to me, the bourbon that showed the whiskey world that bourbon could stand up to Scotch more so than any other bourbon was Pappy Van Winkle. Yeah, I know. Today we're like, can't find it. It's unobtainable. I'm going to have to spend $3,000. Those things are all true, and that sucks. But in the 1990s, Pappy Van Winkle was a bourbon that showed the world that bourbon could be as good as Scotch. And so when it took on Scotch, it kind of like gave the rest of the world a little bit of a notification that, folks, bourbon is here. So it just shows the flexibility. So to me, this song, Flesh of Fantasy, shows Billy Idol's talent as a vocalist more so than any other song. So, and Pappy Van Winkle showed the whiskey world the talents of bourbon more so than any other bourbon in the 1990s. So next up, my last one. I know there are other great songs he's done, but these are the ones I chose for pairings because they just kind of stood out to me. Catch My Fall. The opening just feels like the epic 1980s teenager movie where the kids get like abducted and murdered by a chainsaw massacre or Freddy or Halloween. It just has that like opening like eerie 1980s teenagers are about to get killed near a lake kind of feel. But there's also like you get out of that opening and it jumps into like a saxophone and you got the patented Billy Idol voice. And so this is one to me that this is a bourbon that starts one way and finishes another. And there's one bourbon to me that always is like on the nose. It's like, meh. And then I taste it and it's like, oh, you know what? It's good and sometimes it's great. So like and that's Blade and Bow. Now Blade and Bow is a Diageo product and we don't exactly know where all those stocks are, but I do know that they do a filtration method on that kind of nullifies a little bit of that nose. So to me, this is a Blade and Bow starts out one way and it finishes another. And so, listen, Billy Idol may not be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He may not have a Grammy, but he has nothing but my respect, and I have enjoyed, listening to his catalog and going through my memory banks as well to come up what I think are the best pairings for Billy Idol music. And basically, these are also pairings that are influenced by the song and how those bourbons are. So I encourage all of you all to sit down one day, stream to some Billy Idol, and pair to these wonderful songs. Now, with that being said, I'm looking to do probably some more of these solo episodes. Please let me know what you think of these. Go to fredminnick.com and shoot me a note saying, like, what do you think of the solo episodes? Do you like them? Do you not? You would rather have like the interview going on? But I like the pairing of the whiskeys. I like talking about this stuff. And, I may actually spend a good amount of time on those who should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I'll tell you, there's a really good website called bestclassicbands.com. I got on there, was just taking a look, and I'm amazed by the bands that are not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. B-52s, are you kidding me? The B-52s should definitely be on there with Love Shack and Rock Lobster. I mean, they kind of like, they're like Dance City rock. Pat Benatar, of course, we had her husband on the show before, Neil Giraldo, and he has a whiskey out called Three Chords, by the way. She's not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. That's a shocker. But you know, I mean, that's one of those where, you know, that's going to get rectified. Pat Benatar's not going to be out of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for long. Tim Buchanan, Jimmy Buffett's not in the Hall of Fame. The Cadillacs, Freddie Cannon. Phil Collins. Look, I know a lot of people have a lot of opinions about Phil Collins one way or another regarding Genesis, but I thought Phil Collins was amazing in his solo career, but he should totally be in there. Duran is not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Wow. Eurythmics? I can see Eurythmics, you know, Annie Lennox and Dave Stewart, both incredible, but I can see that one taking a little time. It's kind of like in the NFL Hall of Fame, it took a long time for people to respect wide receivers. And I feel like Eurythmics, you know, with the Sith Pop, Sith Pop tends to not get the respect that it deserves, in my opinion. So I think we'll see them in at some point. Foghat? How is Foghat not in the Hall of Fame? That's crazy. The Go-Go's? You know, I can see the Go-Go's, you know, because they were the first all-female band. Maybe that's why they got a little bit of that misogynistic stuff in the early going, but definitely let them in now. But you can go and take a look at that website. Again, that's bestclassicbands.com, bestclassicbands.com, and In Excess is not in there. That's a tough one. That's a tough one. That one might be on the horizon because they've had so many hits and meant so much to so many people. Cyndi Lauper's not in. Wow. That's one I would not have expected. But and Motorhead. How's Motorhead? Meatloaf, George Michael. My goodness. I guess there are just so many great bands over the years that, you know, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has a very difficult job to get them in. I imagine having a vote on something like that, and they say you can only have 4 in or 5 in or something. I imagine that's got to be one of the most difficult predicaments to be in. Oh my goodness, I couldn't even imagine. Seriously, I couldn't do it. I don't think I could pull that off. I'd be voting for all of them. But Billy Idol, if I had a vote, you would have gotten my vote every year and then again on Sunday. So I may have broken the rules just to get you in. But that's going to do it for me this week, everybody. Again, make sure you go to fredminnick.com, and shoot me an email about what you thought about the format of this week's episode. I'm looking to do maybe a solo once a month like this, so I can have a little bit more of my injecture into the music world and pairing some bourbons to them. I think that'll be a lot of fun. But listen, I've had a great time here. I hope you did too. Make sure you click the subscribe button on however you get your podcast and give us a review. This will help us with the algorithm lords. The algorithm lords dictate everything these days, and when you give us a review, it helps other people find us. So I really appreciate it. Big shout out to my producer, Pamela Furr. She just overcame COVID. Listen, you don't want to mess with that redhead. She will kick that ass, to include COVID, folks. And a big shout out to my video editor, Jason, who's always doing a great job for me, and Kevin Gibson, who does the show notes, and of course, the sponsorship team, Justin Zweig, Gary Krantz. Appreciate you guys, and my manager, Clay Bush. Let's have a great 2021 together. And be safe out there, everybody. No licking handrails, no licking trash cans. And remember, vodka sucks unless it's being used for hand sanitizer. Cheers, everybody.